It's the Security Weekly News, episode 312. I'm Doug White, and welcome to the week of 23 July 2023. We got Citrix, Ivanti, DOJ change. What was that on Silicon Valley? His show was called Ivanti or something like that. Yeah, his company was called that. Ivanti, DOJ changes, Elon X, TETRA Radio, Google WEI, Jason Wood, and more on the Security Weekly News.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
It's the show that keeps you up to date on the latest security news twice a week, your trusted source for accurate security information and expert analysis. It's time for Security Weekly News.
Why does multi-factor authentication have to be a pain for users? It doesn't. Beyond Identity is the most secure MFA on the market and the easiest to use. They ensure that every authentication is multi-factor by default, with phishing-resistant factors that secure access from the start. Beyond Identity safeguards organizations from breaches, data loss, and fraud by eliminating weak phishable authentication factors like OTP and SMS push codes. Go to securityweekly.com/beyondidentity to get a free demo. That's securityweekly.com/beyondidentity to get a free demo today. Are you constantly thinking about how to keep your enterprise as secure as possible? Get to know Chrome Enterprise, the trusted browser for security-conscious professionals like you. Its ease of use for IT and security teams and added access controls protect the remote, extended, and hybrid workforce, keeping your entire enterprise safe. Don't settle for a browser that compromises your organization. Visit securityweekly.com/Chrome Enterprise now to learn more and start protecting your enterprise like never before. All right, welcome to Security Weekly News. I'm Doug White. CVE 2023-3519 was patched last week, which was a critical severity bug which can be exploited to execute arbitrary code remotely without authentication, and it even gives you a foot massage while doing it. Some of these things are just so terrifying. The vulnerabilities on Citrix Application Delivery Controller, which is called ADC, and the gateway. So this is a Citrix appliance that you put in. CISA warned last week that that attacks exploiting this vulnerability have been being seen since June 2023, and at least one case targeting critical infrastructure had been observed. But on Friday, Bishop Fox warned that there's a new way to exploit this vulnerability, which can be used against any appliance which is set to being a gateway or AAA virtual server, and if it has a specific route that is enabled by default in some installations of the device. Now, there's the article has a whole layout of how this attack works and so on. So if you're interested in reading about the attack, you can. But the attack is just an unauthenticated Stack Overflow. He said if all these conditions were in place, you could do an unauthenticated Stack Overflow, and you basically can do bad things. An analysis of vulnerable appliances then showed that there's roughly 61,000 Citrix Gateway login pages that are accessible from the internet right now, and that more than have been unpatched than God. Sorry, I think I had too much to drink this morning. Only a few of these have been patched against this vulnerability. The company claims, this is Citrix, claims that 21,000 unpatched appliances expose the vulnerable route, which means they're vulnerable to this latest exploitation. So out of 61,000, 21,000 of them actually have this new vulnerability that exists. So if you have one of these Citrix devices, they're saying, please patch it ASAP. And I'm telling you, patch the damn thing today if you can, please, because this is apparently a pretty dangerous vulnerability that would allow somebody to execute remote code on your Citrix appliance, which would be bad, as they say in the industry. U.S.-based enterprise software provider Ivanti has been exploited with a new zero-day vulnerability, which was used to target the government of Norway. Norwegian authorities announced on Monday that a dozen government ministries had been targeted in an attack which involved a previously unknown vulnerability in their Ivanti software. The attack involved a zero-day 2023-35078, which impacts Ivanti's endpoint manager mobile, which is called IEMM. Which is it's a tool that's used, or it used to be called Mobile Iron Core, and they bought that back in 2020, I think. but that has now had its name changed. But the software is a widely used mobile management engine that allows IT teams to set policies for mobile devices, apps, and content. It's kind of like Active Directory for mobile phones, so you can actually push out rules and things. The flaw itself is an unauthenticated API access issue, which can then be exploited remotely to users to access users' personally identifiable information on the server, and it'll also allow you to make some changes to the server. Ivanti said, quote, "We have received information from a credible source indicating exploitation has indeed occurred. We continue to work with our customers and partners to investigate this situation and are only aware of a very limited number of customers that have been impacted. The vulnerability is rated critical, and it impacts all the supported versions of this software and older releases, even if they're unsupported." So I guess this is in everything. Ivanti has released a patch, and users are strongly advised to install it as soon as possible since the exploit was described as easy to do. Kevin Beaumont said that honeypot monitoring of this exploit is seeing active involvement. CISA did release an alert on the 0-day as well, and currently it's not in the KEV. It's not in the known exploited vulnerabilities catalog currently, but there are 9 other Ivanti product flaws that are already in there. That does not include this one. The older ones were all from that Pulse Connect secure stuff you recall from last year, and it was also from Mobile Iron products, which indeed they did buy. They bought both those in 2020, so patch. The U.S. Department of Justice is merging the cryptocurrency and computer crimes investigation units since, according to the quote from Principal Deputy Attorney General Nicole Argentieri, it has become obvious to everyone in the cybercrime field that cryptocurrency work and cyber prosecutions are intertwined and will become even more so in the future. Argentieri went on to say that combating ransomware is specifically an urgent priority and that federal law enforcement officials will be better equipped to fight cyber threats by putting the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, or the NCET, alongside the Computer Crime and Intellectual Property Section, the CCIPS. She said that this will more than double the number of federal prosecutors who are authorized to handle cryptocurrency-related criminal cases. The FBI did record 2,385 ransomware attacks in 2022, and Chain Analysis reported that global ransomware victims paid $456.8 million in 2022 in ransomware ransoms. This was down from $765.6 million in 2021, I guess. It didn't really say, but it said previously. But the experts continue to warn that 2023 may rise again, since it appears there are more supply chain attacks being launched by ransomware, I don't know, what do you call ransomware criminals? Ransomware criminals, I guess. But they said more supply chain attacks are being launched, and the attackers are using more aggressive extortion methods than just encrypting your drive, because companies have increased their backup postures and so forth against ransomware encryption-only attacks. So they're using things like threatening to release information and selling information on the dark web. So who knows? Well, Elon never did send me that free Tesla X he promised me in that bar in New Orleans. It was late. Maybe he forgot. I don't know. And he seemed a lot older and smellier than he appears on the internet, but I don't know. Anyway, since Elon bought Twitter for the paltry sum of only $44 billion back in October 2022, a lot of people have thought it was a trash fire. Then they thought it was a burning trash fire, which I guess is redundant, but then a burning trash fire filled with old tires and medical waste. Well, you get the idea. But Musk had admitted this week that Twitter's ad revenue fell about 50% since he took over. And CBS News reported that overall Twitter traffic they described it as plummeted nearly 6% this year from January to June. I don't know if a 6% decline is plummeting, but, it's definitely a downward slope. But the story for us was that Scientia earlier this week declared the death of Infosec Twitter had occurred between the end of April and May. So this was based on a study which they basically use CVE mentions in tweets, which are now called something else, but CVE mentions in tweets as a measure of interest. And the data showed that the daily Infosec tweet count was around 1,272 a day before Elon bought out the bird. And they had dropped down to 333 tweets a day between June 21st and July 12th of this year, which was a 74% decline in CVE mentions. But they went on to say that if you actually revise that data and you remove all automated CVE announcements, it goes from 500 before Elon bought it to only 66 tweets about CVEs, which is an 87% decrease in personal CVE-related tweets. Tanium said that there is still activity on Twitter, but the security community can get intel from other sources. I mean, honestly, I think the study itself is a bit spurious because they did not say and maybe they did. I didn't read the entire academic study, but they basically didn't seem to be controlling for things like the number of information sources out there, which continually increases over time. And if you're just getting your InfoSec news from Twitter, well, I mean, you do have me. But, I mean, there's plenty of other news sources out there now that you can get this information from, including CISA, that doesn't cause you to rely on some guy named Chet who just happened to tweet this thing out. There's absolutely great people to follow on Twitter, like Paul Asadorian and people like that. But at the same time, if that's your only news source, so I don't know, how that. Send me my Tesla X, Elon, or I'm coming back down there and getting it in person. But speaking of Elon, Twitter has now removed the bird logo and replaced it with an X. I mean, Charles Manson did it first, but, that whole forehead branding thing, and look how that turned out. But anyway, Musk announced the change over the weekend, and the change is already live on Twitter as of today. And now there is a website called X.com. Why didn't I buy X.com? I meant to buy A through Z.com back in 2005, and I just never got around to it. And I also meant to buy Sex.com. Whew. And every other nasty word I could think of with .com on the end of it. But, I don't know. I ran out of cash. My wife was going, why are you buying Sex.com? That kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, X.com apparently now, and I did check it, it redirects to Twitter.com. So Musk called this an interim logo and said that he might change the logo again in the future. So, and of course, there was another story today where we found out that guess who owns the branding for X? Not the band. Wait for it. Mark Zuckerberg. And we all know what Mark Zuckerberg is like, right? Just ask the Winklevoss twins. But, apparently Meta owns X. So I don't know exactly how that plays out, but they tore all the logos, I guess, in the middle of the night. They went in there and scraped all the Twitters and birds off the buildings. Literally, I saw photos of them scraping like Twitter off the side of the building and replacing it with an X. I don't know. Maybe hire one of those pharma marketing companies or something like, ask your doctor if Incapacifil is right for you, previously called Gardablutaron XL. Musk went on to say that he may not stop at just replacing the logo, though, and the company will, quote, bid adieu to the Twitter brand and gradually all the birds, whatever the hell that means. Sounds like something Hunter Thompson would say after a lot of ether. But it sounds like Elon might just need a dose of Gardablutaron or maybe skip a dose or something. Okay, I can't stop. I got to quit that. But he went on and said that tweets should now be called X's instead of tweets. And the CEO of X made this very flamboyant statement that said, while Twitter changed the way people conversed with each other, X will go further and will have features, quote, centered in audio, video messaging, payment, banking, and that it will be, quote, a global marketplace for ideas, goods, services, and opportunities. Also, it will give you a Tesla Twitter, which is what they're going to call the new Tesla, or maybe it's now called a Tesla X. Ooh, wait, I see a tie in there. So is it a burning medical waste dumpster fire on a hot July day sitting next to the sewage settling vats in Newark? Yeah, maybe. Did Elon spend $44 billion on something that's now worthless? Maybe. But hey, it's called X, and Elon has got money to spare, so what the hell? TETRA is an acronym for the Terrestrial Trunked Radio Standard for Radio Communication, which is widely used by government entities in critical infrastructure sectors and has been found to have 5 serious security vulnerabilities and maybe a backdoor Trojan. If you never heard of TETRA, you probably don't work for some of these critical infrastructure industries, but this is a protocol that's been around a long, long time, and it is widely used in a lot of critical infrastructure and police and fire and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, they said that this backdoor may have exposed sensitive information. They kind of went back and forth on this. At first it was like, boom, big story. Then it kind of kept getting backpedaled. The issues were discovered by a company called Midnight Blue, which is a cool name, by the way, and also a cool book. But they apparently found these back in 2021, and they said that they had held this back and are now in a collection of vulnerabilities that they're calling Tetraburst. There is no evidence, according to them, that the vulnerabilities have been exploited in the wild currently. Now, according to Midnight Blue, which is located in the Netherlands, Quote, depending on infrastructure and device configuration, these vulnerabilities may allow for real-time decryption, harvest now, decrypt later attacks, message interjection, user de-anonymization, and or session key pinning, and maybe a foot rub. But TETRA was standardized by the European Telecommunications Standard Institute back in 1995, and it is used in more than 100 countries, and it is also used as a police radio communication system outside the United States. The United States does not allow them to use this. They just use something else. But it is also used widely to control essential systems like power grids, gas pipelines, railways, like railway switching and stuff like that, uses these kind of radio frequency protocols. So TETRA-based radios are estimated to be used in at least 24 critical infrastructures inside just the United States, according to Wired magazine. Now, TETRA uses the TETRA authentication algorithm, which is called TAA1, for authentication and key distribution, and the TETRA encryption algorithm suite for air interface encryption, which are both considered trade secrets, so they don't allow anybody to know how this works, which is always a mistake in my opinion. But Midnight Blue said they were able to take this thing and reverse engineer the algorithm, and they found 5 flaws, which all got assigned CVE numbers back in 2022, but they had not released this information, I guess, publicly yet. So if you use these protocols, this may be an article worth deeper examination. And if you use this, you probably know you use it, but you may want to check if you have a lot of radio-controlled, valves and things in ICS or in your police agency or whatever. The most severe of the issue was called an Oracle decryption attack, which could be used to reveal text, voice, or data communications without an encryption key at all. I guess it could be cracked. There wasn't a lot of grim detail about how this worked, but there does not appear to be a patch. And of course, when you see that these are actual encryption algorithms for key exchange and things, that's stuff that's really hard to patch because you've got physical devices with firmware that may have this stuff hard embedded in it. It may just not be patchable. And they say, well, you can't use it anymore. You'll have to go out and tear out all these valve controllers. And yeah, that's pricey. Google has a new proposal that is called WEI, or Web Environment Integrity, which showed up as code in April and was announced in May. It was published last Friday as a working draft specification. So basically what this thing is WEI was described as being a way for browser clients to establish trust with a server through a third party, which presents a token attesting to the integrity of the client environment. Now, I'm not exactly 100% sure, but it's basically like the padlock in reverse, so it validates who's connecting to the server. So if somebody wants to upload something to Google Play, in theory, they have to have a protected environment so they can do this. Well, the discussion in this article goes on to say that this is just the beginning of the slide to where only authorized, officially released browsers will be accepted by certain websites. So a reverse padlock. It'll probably have to put up a warning saying we can't accept your connection. If you want to proceed, you'll have to download this browser and put it in this environment and so forth, which sounds like kind of a good idea on the surface, but critics of the proposal, which was primarily the point of this article, was they said it's just likely a better way to track users and force users to be tracked. And it could lead into all kinds of barriers to entry for any kind of browser competition. So, if a big player says, use our browser, or you can't connect to Google, or use our browser, you can't connect to apple.com or whatever. Well, you're really back into the late 90s where you had to have all these different, we had to have like every browser that existed because, this website didn't work with this browser and so forth. And it was really complicated. So it's kind of like saying you want to come into the drive-in movie, you have to be driving a Ford or we're not going to let you in. This was the sort of counterpoint to this whole thing. I would presume this also leads to forcing more users to accept things and say, if you don't allow our tracking cookie, our metapixel, and all this other stuff, you're not going to be allowed to connect to our server. And of course, they immediately started on, about how this may limit the use, whether this could be used in the Europe and so on because of GDPR and so forth. But we got to protect you for the children. Sorry to be cynical, but it's like July, it's hot, all that kind of stuff. Well, the driving force behind the aroma shock therapy movement, his scents are anything but soothing. Candles like old bag lady's fingers in my mouth on the one train in August 1978. Uncle Dean's old bowling shoe, which was left in the trunk of my car all summer while I was working in 1981. Or even hobo crotch on the 7 train to Flushing, June 1979, are all popular scents. It's not for the faint of heart, but it can apparently shock you into a new reality, according to Gwyneth Paltrow. Please welcome Jason Wood.
And I'll have you know that Uncle Dean's bowling shoes is a hot seller. Unfortunately, I have to keep paying his licensing thing to him for
You
it.
just call it x.com. Yeah.
There we go. Oh, wait. No, that's way too disputed.
Maybe Y then.
We can do Y. We'll try Y. Why not?
Okay. Y done.
Well, the battle over surveillance powers continues to rage on, with Apple now adding to the latest salvo against the UK's proposed online safety bill, which is a rewrite of an existing bill or a clause that's being added to it in specifics around what. Basically, they're saying, here's things that need to be done to protect children against exploitation and abuse and things like that. It's got all of these different provisions in it that, or a number of different provisions that have got the attention of Apple to the point that they said if this bill gets passed in its current form with the requirements the UK government is laying out, they will be forced to remove iMessage and FaceTime from any Apple devices in the UK, which I thought could be a cute trick if I'm passing through on vacation, because it looks like the bill requires anybody who happens to be in the UK to be underneath this. And so, yeah, we'll see. Anyhow, Apple's not the only one pushing back on this bill. A number of other messaging apps also strongly pushed back against it back in April. Signal, Element, WhatsApp, Threema, who I hadn't heard of, Viber, and Wire all published an open letter objecting to the UK's government's plans for this bill and the requirements they have around security controls or being able to require them to be disabled, which I'll get to in a second. Apple filed their own objections earlier, and then now they just upped the severity last week when the BBC published an article in which Apple made the threat that, hey, if this passes, iMessage and FaceTime is gone from the UK. We'll just remove it rather than comply with it. And not only to the BBC, Hacker News also covered this with some additional comments. Now, the bill, what are the requirements that are the point of objection to Signal and all, and Apple? At least some of these the objections here. One is that technology companies have to go to the Home Office, which there's think Department of Homeland Security here in the U.S. For any new security features that they want to add to their platform or tool set before it gets released to the public. They got to get buy-in from the Home Office first. And this strikes me as particularly nightmarish, since governments think in terms of years and maybe millennia before they approve something that they may not like. So if a company wants to roll something out, let's say they're responding to a need of customers or something that's going on right now, we need to add this new feature to protect against some exploitation venue, and okay, now we got to submit this for regulatory review, and we can't do anything about it till it gets rolled out, and the Home Office says that we're good to go. So hooray, won't that be fun? The second part requirement also that is catching some flack is that it allows the Home Office to demand that security features in an application or a platform be disabled without notifying the public. And it has to be turned off immediately. As soon as you get the notification saying, hey, shut this component down, it goes down. If you want to file an appeal, that's great. But you have to turn it off first, and then we'll let the appeals process work its way out grindingly, slowly up through to see if we'll allow you to turn it back on later. But in the meantime, turn that sucker off right now. One of the questions I had was like, okay, so we're going to turn this feature off. What's the scope here? Is that per user, or do we shut down that function in the entire country, or what are you doing here? I made the mistake of opening up the bill itself and trying to search through the text to figure out how they spell this out, and I found that it is 302 pages long of coma-inducing legalese, and so my efforts to search through it and find this section, much less just quickly scroll through and scan through it and try and find it, came to no positive results. So finally gave up and just moved on. So yeah, no idea how they're the idea or what they're aiming at for disabling per user. Everybody, anybody know the answer? I'm curious. The bill again, goes back to there's requirements in it here for looking for signs of child exploitation and abuse. Hacker News actually commented that Apple had already tried to implement something like this kind of on their own as part of iPhoto or iCloud Photos, but abandoned it based on the pushback that they received from activists and privacy advocates and the like. And now, it appears if this bill passes, Apple will be forced to go ahead and do it anyway, because now it's being laid down legislatively. So it's almost like they tried to get ahead of it and do it themselves, do it on their own terms before they got required to do it, and didn't go anywhere. So now they're going to get forced into it based on whatever lawmakers decide that they want to do. So that's a fun spot there. I did blink a little bit at one of the commentary bits from Hacker News. They kind of called out Apple for being hypocritical as they talk about their end-to-end encryption in the iMessage platform and things like that, but then called them out for sending any text messages that go to a non-Apple device being in clear text, which I was like, well, I mean, that's the way SMS works, right? The message goes out and they don't control all of that, so they can't implement end-to-end encryption. I mean, they could send it encrypted, but the receiver would have a heck of a time trying to figure out what's going on. But, whatever, that part was a little interesting. The really interesting thing to me is not yet played out, which is going to be what happens if the UK lawmakers, or how are they going to respond to Apple's threat to remove this entirely from the UK. I didn't see any responses, like quotes for anybody coming back and pushing back on this at this point. So yeah, I'm a little curious to see, members of parliament lose their freaking minds when they realize, if they decide that Apple is actually not bluffing about this and this isn't some kind of ploy to put pressure on them or whatever. If Apple actually removes this functionality, I can only imagine how badly they are going to just lose their freaking crap going on over this. So yeah, that'll be fun to watch. Hey, wait, we passed this legislation requiring you to do something for functionality, and rather than comply, you remove the functionality. That way, just removing the whole issue. But I need to use FaceTime to connect to, my buddies over here or something like that. So yeah, that'll be fun to watch. It's going to be quite the battle there. So interesting article to read through. Think about, and just kind of picture where this could go. It's definitely, I really want to see Apple remove this and see what people do. So if this is interesting to you, go ahead and check it out. And now we'll go back to Dr. Doug about his new fanfic involving some guy named Chet, Kim Yo-jong, and Mrs. Mao.
Mrs. Mao. Yay. Thank you, Jason. All right. And finally, I couldn't resist this story. I was reading it, and I love life hack stuff, and I love it when people, think up clever things. I'm sure you're aware that when you apply for a lot of jobs now, some friendly AI is reviewing your cover letter and your resume to see if you have all the right lingo. I used to do that. I mean, for real, when we were interviewing programmers, and we had requirements, and we would look. You had to go through and highlight. Did they actually put down Fortran on their resume somewhere? Because if it says you need 5 years of horse gelding experience and you only have 3, well, that goes in the trash can. But the article is a kind of clever hack, which is a web kind of hack, which is meta tagging. And it's about basically taking all these buzzwords out of the job ad and pasting them into your cover letter. But, when you do that, when you try to write these letters and you try to write your resume and you want to put all these corporate speak paragraphs because, I'm a well-rounded individual who believes in synergy and the conjoined triangles of success. That's a third reference we've had today to Silicon Valley. And I haven't watched that show in ages, but regardless, middle-out encryption. But when you try to get all that stuff in your resume, it gets kind of clunky and difficult. And, what they really was doing, the people doing this, were they were using a white font, and they paste in the buzzwords from the ad, so the AI who doesn't see color, even though all the AI seem to go racist pretty quick, but they can't apparently see font colors. So it just passes it along because it says, well, yeah, all the right terms are there. It says there's the word 5 years is here. So you just paste it in white, and it's called white fonting. And it's actually a pretty interesting technique to get around AI screening because, now it may not get past the next tier of screening when some actual human looks at it and goes, well, I don't see all those words here. So you definitely want to, play that carefully, but check it out. And that's the news. Thanks to Jason Wood, and we will see you Friday on the Security Weekly News.